Okay, so the Course in Miracles. This is why I really recommend everyone to. I mean, of course, you don't have to, but it's worked. It's worked miracles in my life. Pardon the pun. And yeah, it was the thing. It was like when I was at age 30, I was in active addiction, and then I got kidney failure, and I was facing death in the hospital bed, and that was the moment when I it seemed like there was this surrender that happened automatically. I had run out of options, and then I had a spiritual experience, and this heavenly in this heavenly experience I heard a voice say, "Find a spiritual solution." And then I knew then, even though I was mired, I was released. They saved me, and I was released from hospital. But then I had, really, the things for me were not so much the addiction. I had kidney failure, I had gout, I had asthma, I had all these illnesses, which was making life horrific. And but it's like something had opened up. Having, I think, as a normal person, I call it a normal person, I'd never been interested in spirituality. But this moment of surrender at great depth, because you're facing death, it's a good time to surrender. And then having that spiritual experience really was like a spiritual awakening. There's something more to the dimension of what normal people, being brought up from a science background. So then, but I need, it was like miracle after miracle started to happen, and I got in connection with two spiritual teachers. One was Muji and one was Dr. Hawkins. We'll speak more about the Dr. Hawkins, because Dr. David Hawkins was a Course in Miracles teacher. He was also part of the 12 Steps as well, so he's part of a lot of things and had visited many enlightened teachers. So, and I was given a DVD, and I had another spiritual experience when I was given this DVD. I would say it's a Kundalini awakening experience. What that means is like the tingling up the spine as I watched his video. And then he said, not only was he an addict and he'd recovered from that, I think for 40 years, addiction was no longer a problem, but also all of these physical illnesses that he had I think 23 physical illnesses, some of them life-threatening. And he was doing he was pointed by Spirit to do the Course in Miracles, and he was teaching a Course in Miracles group in Sedona, in Arizona, and everyone, he was teaching them all the lessons, and around lesson 76, approximately there, as all the students were doing it, he was also showing them kinesiology at the same time. Kinesiology is like muscle testing, whereby you can find the truth or falsehood of anything, and whether it's good for you or not. And the students, prior to that, he'd always use this test with muscle testing and kinesiology, which was like, look at the fluorescent light, and then he'd check their muscle strength, and they'd go weak. Or hold this artificial sweetener, and they'd go weak. But it was around lesson 76, and he was just going to do his standard kinesiology check with these things that normally make people go weak. And then people were staying strong. They were looking at the fluorescent lights and still remaining strong. So something really miraculous had happened doing the Course in Miracles. And what normally makes normal humans go weak was no longer making them go weak in the external world as they were doing the Course in Miracles. So it was fundamentally shifting the core beliefs within the ego by doing this course. And he later, he had a group for those with serious illnesses and people with cancer, AIDS, myasthenia gravis, really life-threatening illnesses. As they were doing the course, being taught by Hawkins, all their illnesses released. So as soon as I heard that, I knew God said, like, you're full of illnesses, and the course, the course and Dr. Hawkins' teachings, I knew it as a spiritual knowing. That's the way to freedom. So I think I can't remember, I'm on like year 8 or 9 of doing the Course in Miracles more or less every day for the last 8 or 9 years. It's 365 lessons. You pick up lesson 1 first, go to lesson 365, and then I start again. Next day, it's lesson 1. And I go through these lessons, and they really hack away at the architecture of the ego. And they're aimed at a level of enlightenment, which is full dissolution of the ego. So they'll say things like, you're not a victim of the world you see out there, or it's like what your ego identifies as form, there's something prior to that which you can connect to. So it's total dissolution of the ego. Now some of the lessons are what I call more dualistic or ego-based, like I forgive you, but some of them are more what I'd call non-dual based, like in the absolute truth, like are you resting in the eternal silence, so that there is no me or you. And it also says things like, in the beginning you're forgiving people, but later on it says there was nothing ever to forgive. As you realize those, I was having a conversation with someone on the way here. At the end of the day, you have the spiritual realization, there is no difference between me and you. There is only the oneness, and that becomes a spiritual realization at a later point. So the course is like taking you gradually to those spiritual awakenings where you realize actually there is no separation. There is no need for fear, separation, and you're aligned with the eternal. So I've experienced, my kidney failure left, my asthma, my gout left. So it's very miraculous, but it doesn't just, I used it for physical illnesses, but people have used it if they've been abused and they find difficulty in forgiving, or any addict would find great use in it. The languaging, I would say, a lot of people are put off by the languaging, which sounds a bit Christian-ish and quite heavy duty. But usually I'd say, if you have a teacher or a group that you can liaise with, you'll get the languaging pretty quickly. So I thoroughly endorse it, and it is my experience that miracles start happening quite regularly, which I know a lot of people in this group have had. So that would be, any questions on that? No? Okay, so let's get on to lesson 81 of A Course in Miracles. So this is a review section of A Course in Miracles. Sometimes they have daily lessons, this is a review section. And, okay, so our ideas for review today are taken from lesson 61. I am the light of the world. How holy am I, who have been given the function of lighting up the world? Well, you see, I just share what goes on for me when I read this. How holy am I? Well, holy means not in separation. So, not in lack. When one is in the oneness or not in lack, then one is holy. One is whole. One is in the field of, out of neediness or desperation, or something's not right, or I have to change something or control something. That's no longer. So, how holy am I, who have been given the function of lighting up the world? And here's the thing, for me the course is more of a mystical path than a selfless service path. Like I've said, research, just to illustrate the research out there, TM meditation. I think in Boston, when they got about 4,000 TM meditators to meditate for a month, I think the violent crime rate in the surrounding areas went down about 43%. So just by connecting to that stillness, that light within, the emission into the surroundings is enormously powerful. And Hawkins has done some research as well on the enormous power of people who are spiritually connected in just silently emitting that energy out into the world and helping enormously. So by being in your holiness or your stillness or your eternal nature, you are indeed lighting up the world. So let me be still before my holiness. In its calm light, let all my conflicts disappear. So if you let me be still. Well, for me, holiness is stillness. I mean, they are one and the same. So in holiness, there is stillness. And it gives a clue here. In its calm light, let all my conflicts disappear. Well, conflicts could be labelled as thoughts, you see. If you're identifying with thoughts in the present moment, then it creates a dualistic conflict. There is not that peace. It's okay when thoughts are arising without without identification, then one is more like a channel. So let me be still before my holiness. In the calm light, let my conflicts disappear. No, it's a practical thing. If you're holding any thoughts or conflicts within your head, can you drop them and be in the holiness, in the stillness right now? Just let them. How do you drop conflicts? You just the only reason conflicts stay in mind and create this conflict, if you like, is because there's something being held within the ego with meaning and identification and value. So, like, let's say, if I thought, oh, I'd really like a peanut butter cake right now, then it would be like, there would not be stillness and presence right here, right now, because it's like there's a conflict that can't be present, because it's like, so why is that thought here, or any thought obscuring the holiness and stillness here? It's because something within the ego has importance or meaning or identification, and to the ego it seems important, but actually to holiness it's unimportant. So you just drop everything, let go of the meaning or identification of all forms within mind now, then you'll get to the holiness. As simple as that, or as difficult. Coming from an addiction background, certain things were like very, very important, and one had desperation to get them, like to be successful, to eat that food, to be thin. All of these things were like hugely important and held with huge identification within the ego structure, and so they create separation and desperation and neediness and lack of stillness and presence. So you just trust in dropping them. So in its peace, let me remember who I am. In its peace, isn't that beautiful? In its peace, let me remember who I am. Who am I? Am I a thing right now in conflict, or potentially in a negative energy like sloth, or in the future or the past, or in any low emotional state? So that is not who I am. You see, the only reason those states exist is because of huge identification with certain ideas which are being held within the ego, with great meaning, interest, and ferocity. I mean, the Course would call it special ideas, or special thoughts, or special types of concepts which the ego holds, plus not allowing feelings to be released. So if you're listening to this and you can just let them go, you'll find that in dropping them or allowing the feelings, energy and presence will start to come in, which is the whole point. Some specific forms for applying this idea when special difficulties seem to arise might be, let me not obscure the light of the world in me. Okay. These can also be used on a practical level. I found that most of the Course stuff can be used in a practical. This is how I do it. I often, now that I've been doing the Course for many years, I'll often read something and use it to let go of anything that I'm holding in my head immediately, just to check it out, or I'll get a resonance with it. Like, let's say I was conscious, which I am, conscious that I have a cough today. So it'd be like, let me not obscure the light of the world in me by thinking about my cough, you see. So you use it as a practical thing. Or, let the light of the world shine through this appearance. Let the light, so that I could use that, let the light of the world shine through this appearance of a cough or a sore throat, you see. So you use these to let go of whatever. These are all practical. This shadow will vanish before the light. So so this shadow will vanish before the light. So this thought of my cough will vanish before the light, and you see it disappear. Is there more to the lesson? Is that the end of the lesson?
There's a section Lee.
Yes.
Do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, sorry. Let's put that bit in there. So, and in the next one, the next section, thank you. Forgiveness is my function as the light of the world. It is through accepting my function that I will see the light in me, and in this light will my function stand clear and perfectly unambiguous before my sight. My acceptance does not depend on my recognizing what my function is, for I do not yet understand forgiveness. Yet I will trust that in the light I will see it as it is. Specific forms for using this idea might include: let this help me learn what forgiveness means. So that's when I see the word forgiveness in the course, I think, forgiveness for me just means letting go, no longer holding that thought in mind any longer. So when something is forgiven, if I'm holding on to a grievance against an individual, that story stays in the present moment, or in the unconscious anyway, just underneath the hood. So it's continuous there. So when I've completely forgiven anything, whether it's a person, place, or situation, then it no longer obscures the holiness, or the stillness, or the eternal now. So that's the thing. So let me learn what forgiveness means in relation with my cough, so I can let go of that identification with it. Or it can be used with anything else, whether it's like workaholism or sloth or whatever. Or let me not separate my function from my will. Yeah, let me not separate my function from my will. I mean, that stands on its own. But basically, let me not, my function, the course basically alludes to it. My function is to be in the holiness, in the eternal, in the happiness, in the joy of now. So let me not separate myself by thinking about a cough from my function, which is to be my eternal self in this moment. I will not use this for an alien purpose. Well, anything, when I'm not in my true self, if you like, in the eternal self, then I'm in an alien purpose to the ultimate spiritual aim. So this is to get me into my holiness. So I will not use these thoughts of my cough for an alien purpose, because they take me out of that presence. Or I will not use workaholism for an alien purpose. Or I will not use sloth for an alien purpose, you see. So a lot of these things have, a lot of these thoughts, if you're holding a thought or a conflict thought, the Course in Miracles is, and anyone who does spiritual work, I think everyone in this room has experienced that when you totally let go and you surrender something, astounding miracles happen. And when you're holding on to it, or you're thinking about it and you have that kind of energy around it, that heavy energy around it, situations are stuck and they don't go that well. So it's well known in spiritual circles that if you can completely release something energetically and in thought form, that's when the awesome miracles start to happen. So everyone's experienced this. So if you're new to spirituality, then that might not be well known. If you're new to spirituality, it's like, well, I need to control things and think about things and be in fear as much as possible. And then that will be, or sloth as much as possible, and then that will be the best thing to do. So once you start to get experiencing of these miracles, letting go, surrendering, or using the Course lessons or any other spiritual tool, let go, and then something always better occurs. Because when you're in alignment, one of the things, it's like sloth is a very low energy. It's a low vibration, which just attracts slothful situations and slothful behaviors and slothful thoughts. Fear, likewise, is an energetic vibrational field. And there's certain characteristics. People in fear, when they're tuned into that, they behave fearfully. They have certain characteristics, which are those of people in fear. They might have a burglar alarm, they might be looking around all the time. They're in that vibrational state. Someone in the level of desire, which is like addiction, they have certain characteristics which mean they're at that vibration. So these vibrations are the low vibrations, and they're not good to stay at, because you'll just attract situations and have thoughts in those vibrational levels which are just consequent to what you're vibrating. So the more you can let go and be in states of peace or happiness or serenity, that's the good thing. Okay, so